Chip, you will never get to go to NIMH. And I mean, it would be kind of cool to have your life extended for a long time so you could be with me for a long time. Hi, I'm Quin, and joining me is Chip, because today I'm going to talk about the book trilogy as well as movie about the Rats of NIMH. The trilogy it's Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH, Rasco and the Rats of NIMH, and the third being RT, Margaret and the Rats of NIMH. Wah. And I know you're thinking, well, Quin, why are you talking about a children's series and a really cool movie? Well, that's because I loved this series and a really cool movie when I was a kid. And for the last several years, I've wanted to revisit them, and I just haven't. And, well, I did, and I have some feelings. Okay, so I was about 10 when I got into that book series. Whoop. I had not yet seen the movie. I didn't know there was a movie. The movie, The Rats of NIMH, is directed by Don Bluth, and it's awesome, and it came out in 82, I believe, and it was loosely based on Mrs. Frisby in The Rats of NIMH. And you're thinking, well, what? That doesn't sound right. Like, in the movie, her name's Mrs. Frisby. Well, that's because they changed it because they thought having her named Mrs. Frisby would be confusing with the toy. So, like, it's not a bad adaptation of the book. Obviously, it's a little bit more kid-friendly, which you think, oh, hey, the book is kid-friendly. But I don't know. I feel like the first one was meant for a little bit older kids, and then the second and the third book were a bit younger. Chip, I don't think she wants to be in the video anymore. Alright, so we're gonna say bye to Chip, because Chip, say hi, Chip. Chip is so cute and distracting. She says hello, hello. She doesn't want to be in the video. So, alright. Chip, are you gonna stay with us? Are you gonna chill out? Okay. So, if you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But, okay, so the Rats of NIMH, it's basically these rats that were captured by these doctors that were wanting to do experiments on them, and they end up giving them all these injections, and they make them really smart, like human-level smart. And in some parts of the book, it implies that maybe they're smarter than humans. But anyway, so these rats end up helping this widow mouse who needs she lives on a farm, and she needs her home to be relocated because the plow is coming and she has a sick child. And revisiting this series, like, just as an adult is really interesting because, like, she has an like, something I really wish they would have put into the movie is more of interactions with Mrs. Frisby or Brisby, whatever, with her son in the movie. Because, like, he's really just, he's just sick. Timmy's just in bed the whole time, yawning and occasionally coughing. And, okay, but, like, in the book, he knows that he could die, and he tells, like, his mom, he's like, I'm not afraid. He's like, if you have to leave, then you have to leave. And it's such a, like, a heartbreaking little scene that's in this book, and I'm just like, oh my god, like, that's so, I don't know, I feel like maybe they could have treated us more like adults. Like, you know, kids are pretty smart, even though, anyway, okay, so, Don Bluth movie. Alright. The other thing about the movie, which they don't pack any punches either, I mean, there's some scary scenes, but I don't know, I feel like they could have added it just a little, that part some more parts between her and Timmy. But anyway, alright, I'm gonna put Chip away because she is just too distracting to me, and I don't want this to become a huge rambling, like the new Dumbo review. So, Okay, so she needs to move her house, and in the movie they add this element of like magic. I have the shirt. There's like this magic little stone that makes the house move because Mrs. Frisby has the greatest heart ever, apparently. The reason why she has a connection to the rats is because her husband helped them get through one of the vents to get out of NIMH, so he was a big part. But like in the movie, they kind of deify him, which is really creepy. While like which goes into the movie sequel, which doesn't even deserve to be mentioned, but it exists and it's just trash. It came out in like I think 98. Something like that, the sequel, Timmy to the Rescue. Don't even, it's not even worth. Anyway, so like they kind of deify him a little bit in the movie, and then the leader of the Rats of NIMH is named Nicodemus, and he's also in the movie. He's also like they do deify him a little bit too. Like they treat him like he's, you know, like, ooh, mystical, and he's magic. And okay, I liked the movie, don't get me wrong, I really did. It's just coming back to the book series, I'm just kind of like, because I loved Nicodemus in the books. Well, I loved him in the first book. I should also say that these two sequels did not come out until after the movie, and they were also not written by the same person. They were written by the daughter of the man who wrote the first book. And I feel like after the movie came out and then these books were written, these were meant for even like younger kids, which is fine. Like, you know, it's fine because it is meant to be a kid's series. But like there's just some stuff that's they leave open about in the first book that I just really wish it had been touched on again. Like as an adult, I would be like, no, I have more questions. I want to know things. So they end up saving, you know, they end up, in both the movie and the book, they end up moving. The house ends up being moved and she ends up, you know, her family's safe and yay, it's great. And then the rats end up leaving because people from NIMH are going to like come and try to get them back or something. In the second book, Rasco and the Rats of NIMH, the character actually that dies in the movie that does not die, well, Nicodemus also does die in the freaking book either, like in the first book anyway, and neither does Jenner, because like that's the villain, the other villain aside from the plow coming to move the house. The other villain is these other rats that don't want to leave. Oh, that's right, I missed a whole entire plot. The rats, they have to leave because they don't, besides the NIMH people coming after them, they don't want to keep stealing like electricity and all this other things from the farmer. They want to do it themselves. And this other rat, Jenner, who was best friends with Nicodemus, and they were like taken in the same group that got taken away to NIMH when they were captured. They don't agree on this. Like Jenner doesn't want to leave, like he doesn't have a problem with it, but it's not super villain. They don't hate each other, like they just have an argument and they leave. But you know, they have to make the kids movie more exciting, so they all kind of assume that Jenner and his group like died, because there's the whole reason why the people from NIMH are trying to find them again is because they're rats. The rats that leave Nicodemus's group, they try to get like a motor from one of the hardware stores and they end up dying, and then ooh, surprise, you find out in book 2 that Jenner did not die, and he ended up living in the city and then meeting another rat and having a son, I mean multiple sons I'd imagine, which is Rasco, and which makes me have questions, like if the rats are so intelligent, do they mate with rats that aren't that intelligent? But then if you go back to the first book, like Mrs. Frisby was, you know, pretty smart. Like, I don't know. I have questions. I'm just confused. Like, what is that like? Because they do also talk about in the first book, specifically, which is one of the things that's really terrifying for Mrs. Frisby, is that her husband never told her about the connection to the Rats of NIMH. Like, he just never told her. And it wasn't that he was, like, just wasn't going to ever. It just, he didn't know how to say it, because along with the super intelligence that they got from NIMH, it extended their lifespan. And that was kind of a big deal. That was something that was kind of scary. It like was frightening to like Mrs. like, what is that, you know, what is that going to mean for my children? And that was something that I found really, really interesting. And they didn't really touch on it in the rest of these. But obviously, okay, so the lifespan is extended, and I'm just wondering, like, how does that affect, like, Rasco? And Rasco is kind of a brat, because he thinks, like, you know, he's a brat, and he ran off to Thorn Valley, which is where the Rats of NIMH live now, and they set up their own little world. Timmy is also in this. He's actually like in the little picture. Timmy and Rasco become actually really good friends, and like they bicker and stuff, and it's kind of adorable. Like I said, the Rasco in the next book is definitely meant for probably even younger readers, I guess, because it's very simple, even though, but it's sweet. I enjoyed it. And what I also do like, I don't know if Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH have pictures in it the way, let's see if I have a picture now, of course. Little pictures in it, because I actually listened to it on audiobook. But yeah, it's got cute little pictures throughout, which is adorable. Like, I liked seeing them. But anyway, Rasco is Jenner's son. And he lies about it at first, but then he, you know, apologizes, and he, like, it's interesting that, like, okay, I mentioned the lifespan thing. From book 1 to this one is about 3 years. And, like, to them, it's so interesting, because, like, the kids that are growing up that have also, you know, been born, they're like, oh, the history of NIMH. So I guess, like, to them, it has started to become, like, oh, this is their history, and because, you know, rats don't usually live that long. Chip. No. It does become like their religion almost, which is very interesting. Like, part of me is just like, oh gosh, I really wish, like, I would have loved to explore this world with like the different age group in mind, as far as like the details of things and how everything's progressed. So they have, let's see, the story of this is like, yeah, it's him coming into the world of the rats, and it's really actually sad, because his, Jenner has become like incredibly paranoid, and he's scared. He lives in the city, you know, he's got his new family, but he's terrified because he's smart and he knows all the bad things that could happen in the world. So, like, that's really sad. And Rasco ends up telling Nicodemus about that. And then the big deal plot in this, aside from him joining and trying to figure out what it's like to be a city rat in the country, you know, like that, there's a little bit of that there. There's people that are coming to build a dam in the farmland, and that's gonna destroy Thorn Valley, so the rats are wanting to sabotage it, and it's like really fast that this whole, like, this part of the plot happens. But they end up, like, with the farmers and the other people, they don't want that to happen, and there's like protests, and they're like, let's save the farm, like, you know, this is our valley too, we don't want to build a shopping mall or something. And Rasco ends up, like, in a panic. He has a moment where he has to try to save his other friends. He writes, because they can read and write, he writes stop on a piece of paper, and like the humans see it, and they're like, what? The guy, he just said stop. What is happening? And like, there's a reporter that is, like, she was, it's kind of mentioned that she had heard of the rats that had tried to steal the motor a few years earlier. So, you know, so the rats are making noise. Like, people know about this. They're not as secretive as they thought. So it's not such a secret about NIMH. But then, you know, it's yay, they're victorious. The plans for the dam are ruined because they sabotaged the computer and protests and all that stuff. So, yay, Rasco. Okay, so, gosh, I gotta wrap this up. Alright, so RT, Margaret, and the Rats of NIMH. So something actually kind of funny is when I was a kid, and I read, this was the first one that I read. I read them backwards the first time I ever read it, and I loved this one as a kid. Like, this one, I reread this one a few times when I was young. And so it was, like, really fun coming back to this one, but it was also, like, I did run into the little bit of frustrating, like, I want more details, or I wish I knew more, I understood more, like, we were given more information, but, once again, kids' books, though. Sometimes nostalgia should just stay that way. No, I'm kidding, I really enjoyed rereading this. RT, Margaret, and the Rats of NIMH. This is about, I guess, like, a year or two later from the events of Rasco. Timmy is in this a little bit, but not that much, because he's more like the go-between. Oh crap, I forgot to mention, yeah, Mrs. Frisby was in the last book a little bit, but she's not really in this one that much. Like, she's still alive, like, I don't recall them saying that she died or anything. But at this point, Nicodemus is getting pretty old. Like, he's older in this, and they were at NIMH for a few years, so add on like a regular rat lifespan too. So rats usually live about 2 to 3 years. I know, I have raised many of them, although I did have 2 that almost lived to 4 years, and that was cool. But anyway, so Nicodemus is getting on there in years, but he's still like, they still haven't deified him like they do in the movie. Anyway, so this is about 2 kids that get lost on a camping trip, and they end up being rescued by the rats, and they stay with the rats for, I guess, a few weeks, or maybe a month or 2. I don't know, the time is a little bit wonky on here. The girl's name is Margaret, and she's about 10 years old, and her brother is a few years younger than her, and he's got like some kind of like learning issue. They never quite say what it is, but I think he's probably autistic, based on like more what we know now. I mean, this book came out, when this one came out. Sorry, I got, yeah, so like I said, RT and Margaret and Rasco, this one came out after the movie. So this one was, when did this one come out? I'm sorry, I have my notes. I have my notes over. Okay, this one came out in 1990. So, gosh. So, he doesn't talk much, is like the idea, and he doesn't express his emotions very well. So, a lot of the stuff with RT, whose name is Arthur, but they call him RT for short, is a lot of it's just in his head. And I remember being a little confused when I was younger, because I just didn't quite understand, whatever. You figure out stuff when you get older. And as you can see in the picture, in the cover, this is Margaret trying, because they decide they're gonna help, and she moves the hawk's nest, and you can see down here, ooh, you can see down here, it's a little rat in a dress. That's one thing that I did find a little annoying is, I mean, yeah, the little rats, like, sometimes they'll wear, like, clothes or eye patches in Nicodemus's case, or, like, hats, but they don't have, like, wardrobes, like in the movie. Like, it's not, they're still just, like, running around being adorable. Whatever, that's just a nitpick of mine. So they end up, like, Margaret wants to help them. Well, she doesn't want to, she kind of has to. Because it's like, okay, well, you're either going to die or they'll feed us. But they, 2 human children eat a whole lot of food. So, and unfortunately, Arthur, like, kind of breaks a lot of stuff. Like, he breaks their little bridge, and he almost floods their entire nest. So people are really, wow. The other rats are kind of frustrated, but they also really, like, they do enjoy learning about the kids and the humans even more, especially, like, the young rats. And Arthur becomes really good friends with rat Christopher, who is mentioned in the last book. I just didn't really mention him that much because he doesn't play a huge role. He becomes friends with Rasco, and he's just a young rat, and but Christopher and Arthur become really good friends, and their friendship is really sweet. Like, it really tugs at the heartstrings. And so, like, they're lost for a significant amount of time, to the point where they find out that there's been a funeral for them. They find out through letters from Timothy, actually, and they decide, well, like, we have to, okay, like, we have to go home. And it's like, it's hard to describe. Like, it's not really that, the growth that, like, Margaret goes through from being, like, you know, just selfish and, you know, just a typical 10-year-old and just a little brat and not wanting to really do anything. She grows so much in this book, and her relationship with Nicodemus is really good. Like, he's just such a good character. Like, I love Nicodemus so much. I wish we could have gotten more of him. Like, that's like the one downside of this whole thing, is that I wish we could have gotten more of him. Like, there's a kind of it's not really a throwaway line, but when he's telling Mrs. Frisby in the first book all about their experience with NIMH and everything they learned, and he was like, I don't know if Rats will ever publish books, but I would love to. I have so many thoughts that could just fill novels and novels, and I'm like, I wanna know what's going on in his brain. But anyway, it's interesting having a different person write the character, even though, like, Jane Leslie Connolly did a fine job with her father's work. But, you know, I'm just like, I want to know more. So they have to go back, and Nicodemus, you know, does tell Margaret and Arthur, like, how important it's going to be that they have to be secret, because, like, the people from NIMH will try to come find them again. But she promises, like, as good as she possibly can, but, you know, it's a big secret, and they get questioned when they get home. Like, and then the reporter from the last book ends up finding out, and she, like, kind of makes her way, and she's like, well, what if it doesn't really make sense how these kids were able to stay alive as long as they did with what they, you know, with the knowledge that they, you know, used to be able to survive. So, like, the story ends up coming out, and they have one last visit. It's so sweet, with Rasco and Christopher, and they come to visit Margaret and RT and, like, their world, and they have a cute little moment at a carnival that's like, because it's at night, so they kind of sneak out and go to a little carnival, and they have a little, you know, do the rides, they take little photos together in the little photo booth, and it's just so sweet. Like, it's so sweet. I read, when I was doing a little bit of research for this, that there's supposedly talks of a live-action remake of the whole series. Let's see, is that what's on my notes? Or if it's just... Yeah, like, there's rumors that they might do a series of the whole thing, and that would be really cool if they did that, because, I mean, like, I'm not a big fan of live-action remakes and stuff like that, and a lot of animal movies just kind of annoy me, with the exception of Togo on Disney+. I would love to see somebody take this whole series and make it into something. Like, that would be really cool. Chip is eating right now, so she's not going to join us in saying goodbye. But gosh, I talked about this a lot and I rambled a bit. But yeah, Rats of NIMH, it's a really good series. Even coming back to it as an adult, even if you don't have the background with it of enjoying it as a kid, maybe give it a little check out. You know, the books aren't really that expensive, and, you know, if more people are interested, that means maybe the right people will get involved for when it comes time to make a movie or a show or whatever. So, yeah, Rats of NIMH. Did you watch it when you were younger? Did you read any of the books? Did you know there were books? Did you know there were a movie? Let me know in the comments. Give me a like, give me a thumbs up. If there's anything else, I don't know, you could recommend. I'm going to be doing the clown stuff again soon. It's just been, you know, kind of crazy over here. Yeah, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye!